The path to the NBA as an American has typically followed a set route. Dominate your opponents in high school, play well enough in college for a year or two, and then go pro. There has been very little variation in the past 18 years, with the only exceptions being three guys who went to unusual high schools that allowed them to continue playing basketball for a fifth year. However, their success in the NBA after being drafted has been borderline non existent. But this is not how it always used to be. In fact, for an 11-year stretch from the late 90s to the mid 2000s, many top draft picks were used on kids straight out of high school. Obviously, you know about the successful players. Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, Jermaine O'Neal, Tracy McGrady, Tyson Chandler, Amari Stoudemire, LeBron James, Dwight Howard, Monte Ellis, and Lou Williams. But most of these kids drafted straight out of high school would either be fringe players for a short career or just flop out of the league entirely. Today, I want to discuss one of these kids, a man who I only remember faintly, as his time in the NBA occurred back when I was a wee lad, but trust me when I say he stood out. Today we are going to look at what happened to the NBA career of Robert Swift. Going way back, Swift was a 7 foot tall, skinny redhead who drew a lot of attention while on the basketball court. He was massive, but he seemed to have a very good control of his body given his size. In my own experiences, I was fortunate enough to play high school basketball with a few 7 foot tall players, but none of them were able to move the way Swift was able to. Though he did not possess much of a jump shot, he was a big enough, agile enough, and his skills were sound enough to draw interest from many NCAA Division I programs. So much so that going into his senior season, he was already committed to attending the University of Southern California. After a solid season where he averaged 18 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 blocks a game, he was awarded a spot in the 2004 McDonald's All-American Game, the biggest showcase of high school players in the world at the time. Here, Swift went toe-to-toe with fellow young star big men Dwight Howard, Al Jefferson, and Josh Smith. In total, 7 players from this game would forego college to begin their NBA careers, Swift being one of them. With the 12th pick in the 2004 NBA draft, Swift would be selected by the Seattle Supersonics. He would become a millionaire overnight and buy his family a house, a car, and pay for his little brother to go to college. His family was seemingly set for life. His parents had declared bankruptcy for the 5th time a year prior. Now, they no longer had to work. A literal rags to riches story. But Swift was a project. Everyone knew this. Swift was not going to storm into the league in the same way Dwight Howard did, by putting up big numbers and leading his team. No, he was very raw due to a lack of competition. Though his frame may have been good enough to push around high school kids, full-grown men equal to his size weren't going to budge. The team he had drafted to was in no hurry to develop such a project. The head coach infamously ignored him. Players did not talk to him, and the team's star, Ray Allen, even publicly said, "At this stage in my career, I don't want to watch somebody take a couple years to develop before they can help us." Basically, nobody except management wanted Swift. Despite being a lottery pick, Swift only played in 16 games his rookie season, averaging less than a point a contest. Not because of injury, but because he just wasn't good enough. Throw in the fact that the NBA's D-League was non-existent at this point, Swift was just $1 million fly on the Supersonics locker room wall. During this year, Swift did become well liked, however, but not by his teammates. Rather, he drew a following amongst his peers, college-aged kids around Seattle. He would spend a lot of time with people his own age living the life he decided to skip out on by not going to college. It was natural for him to fall into the crowd of his peers, and one could argue this stunted his growth as a pro, but at the same time, Swift was isolated. He needed someone to confide to, someone to spend time with, and someone to be human around. This outlet was not his NBA team. The next year, things improved. The former Sonics coach was replaced by someone who supported Swift, leading to him finally getting consistent playing time. He was now building confidence. During the 2006 NBA season, he would play in 47 games, and his averages jumped up to 6 points, 5 rebounds a night. Though not spectacular, averaging anything above garbage time buckets as a 20-year-old is a step in the right direction for the young project. The following summer, Swift bought a mansion, began collecting firearms, cars, motorcycles, even snakes, all while his passion for basketball grew. He came back for the 2007 NBA season jacked, as long hours in the weight room and proper eating were finally paying off. He was even now rocking some long, red rock star hair. He had developed his game along with his body, now able to pull up mid-range with consistency while also being able to defend guys his own size. Swift was set to finally make the impact in the NBA scouts and management foresaw 2 years prior. Then, in a preseason game against the Sacramento Kings, Swift tore his ACL in a non-contact play. His season was over before it officially began. He was devastated. All the hard work, the glimpses in practice of a future star, the hype built up around him all washed down the drain. Although his coaches and friends did their best to keep his morale up, reminding him of his age and how much game there was still left for him to play, the injury took a heavy toll on him both physically and emotionally. It was okay though. Swift was signed for 5 years. He had plenty of time to prove himself before he'd be a free agent. He could still do it. The 22-year-old Swift was not the spry and hyped kid he was a year prior. The injury had severely altered him physically. He came back to the NBA slower than a year ago. Whether this is to blame on the medicine at the time, the specifics of the injury, or Swift as an individual, one will never know. He returned to basketball and looked like his old rookie self, just bigger. 8 games into the year, averaging only a point a game, Swift would re-tear the same ACL. His season was once again over. Only 22 years of age, his career as a professional basketball player was on the line, and emotions were running high. The media had forgotten about the 7-foot ripped redhead with luscious locks. They had moved on to the franchise's newest young star, Kevin Durant, who was able to put up monster numbers as a rookie to set the stage for a Hall of Fame career. Meanwhile, his teammate, Swift, only 3 years older, was forced to watch from the sideline. Swift may have been a multi-millionaire at an age where his peers were living off of ramen noodles and energy drinks while they studied for hours into the night, but he was not happy. It is funny how it works. Money cannot solve happiness. Though wealthy, it was well known that Swift gave an astonishing amount of money to his family and friends. He was a gentle giant. He cared for those close to him. Whether they were using him or not is up for debate, though now one could argue it is plain to see. Swift was not in the best place mentally. Now at 23 years old, he is living in a rental in Oklahoma City away from his friends and family on the West Coast, as his franchise had relocated. He comes back to the 2008 NBA season, desperate to prove himself to the franchise that drafted him 4 years ago. But he would be forced to play through even more setbacks. He was now relegated to a bulky knee brace in an attempt to keep the 2-time damaged knee together, while also repeatedly injuring his back and even breaking his hand during the season. Swift would play in only 26 games with the Oklahoma City Thunder, receiving 10 starts as the coaching staff still wanted him to succeed, but it wasn't working. He finished the year averaging 3 points, 3 rebounds a game. Another failure of a season. 5 years into his lottery pick career, he had only managed to play in 97 games. Things were not looking good. I want to bring something up. Most people do not realize how well Swift played when healthy, even after the injuries. His per 36 stats for his career were nearly a double-double on over 50% shooting from the field. That doesn't scream bust to me, and if it weren't for the injuries, I believe he could have become a borderline all-star. After the 2008 season, Swift was now a free man, although the better wording would probably be a lost man. He would play summer league ball with the Boston Celtics in 2009, and honestly played better than he did in any summer league prior, although it was still just 7 points a game. With no NBA offer in front of him, he would sign to play with the Bakersfield Jam, his hometown D-League team. His preseason with the team was shaky. Swift had gained considerable weight, his passion was gone, depression must have likely been taking over, and his support group was nowhere to be found. It takes a fall from greatness to reveal who it is that truly supports you, and Swift was realizing it now. Let me remind you, he is still only 24 years old. His peers, by this time, were young adults, just getting the hang of life, starting careers, families, beginning what it truly means to be alive. Yet Swift was in a completely different situation. He would play in only 2 games with the Bakersfield Jam, scoring just 5 points. He was done. He approached his head coach and told him he was done with basketball and he was going to become an MMA fighter. Whether or not this new goal was true, one thing was certain. Swift had lost his love for the game. A full year would go by. Swift's current standing is unknown as the public had forgotten about him. In reality, he was now a father, although not married. He began drinking excessive amounts of alcohol, and he gave up working out. He was giving in. In July of 2010, though, he received a phone call which could have changed his life. A team in Japan, the Tokyo Apache, were interested in his services, a chance to turn his life around. During the preseason for this league, he lost 70 pounds in only 1 month in Japan. Along with this, he was opening up again to his teammates and coaches. His life was looking better. He was healthy, having fun, and he was ready to make a return to professional basketball. 2 games into the season, Swift was dominating his opponents, averaging 21 points, 17 rebounds a night. He was his old self. Then Mother Nature struck. Japan was hit by a devastating earthquake, 15,000 deaths. Basketball within the country was rightfully put on hold. Swift would have to go back to the United States. Upon his return, he was offered a contract to play in the NBA. The Portland Trail Blazers saw what he did in Japan and who he had become. They were ready to give him the chance to make a comeback, but at the last moment, they backed out. No end-of-season deal would come in 2011. Then the NBA lockout hit, distancing the scouts and management from pursuing a swift comeback. This enraged the gentle giant. He knew he could play, his body would just never allow it. He was frustrated and desperate. Everything that could go wrong since his draft had gone wrong. Swift's desperation for an escape of the realities of his life led to experimentation with drugs. First, it was just an absurd amount of alcohol, then some weed, but that just made him more depressed. He moved on to heroin, then cocaine, then meth. By the time he realized there may be a problem, he was already combining everything he could in one sitting in his own personal drugged cocktail. He tried to stop, but opiate withdrawal is one of the worst feelings in the world. It is the only drug addiction where quitting cold turkey actually could lead to death. It is beyond the cravings. It is a sickness. Heaving, fatigue, jitters, fever, sweats, headaches, everything that makes someone feel bad strikes when withdrawing from heroin. The only cure, ironically, is more heroin. So he keeps coming back to end the pain. Who knows what was going on in Swift's head at this time? His meaning to life was lost. He no longer had any goals. He goes days without sleep and begins losing alarming amounts of weight. Maybe you have heard of the infamous foreclosure of Swift's mansion, a house built for a king, packed full of empty beer cans, with bullet holes in the walls, ammunition lying in every room, dog crap piles a foot high, over 100 pizza boxes scattered about, and large amounts of luxurious, expensive liquor bottles. By 2014, nobody knows where Swift has gone. All his contacts were left dry. What was left of the media had given up. While his fellow courtmates from the McDonald's game 10 years ago were winning championships, going to all-star games, building families, and living the dream, Swift was on the brink of life. On a Saturday in October of 2014, the police raided a crack house looking to nab a notorious opiate dealer. They found the man they were looking for, but they also found a 7-foot-tall redhead. Robert Swift was living in the crack house as a type of security for the man and his drugs. The dealer was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Swift is temporarily set free. He moves back into the crack house. No heating or electricity. Just him, a waffle maker, and an extension cord, which a neighbor, an elderly woman, generously lets him plug in. And a single Transformers DVD. Swift develops a bond with the woman. They get along very well, and she even invites him over for dinner. An unusual sight considering the situation, but that was just the kind of person Swift was. A gentle giant, always had been. Never hurt anyone, even while acting as security. He was mostly just there for show. Eventually, Swift moves in with another dealer, begins spiraling again. He has warrants out for his arrest due to his rifle possessions. He doesn't leave the crack house for months, determined to disappear from society. But eventually Swift is found, high out of his mind, and arrested. Though standard practice of weaning heroin addicts off the drug is to give them low, infrequent doses as their body readjusts, Swift was denied this. He spent weeks in a cell, curled up in a ball on a hard bed much too small, under a single sheet with a fever constantly heaving. It was miserable, a new lowest of lows. He does eventually improve though, thankfully surviving the withdrawals. The fellow prisoners in his medium-level security facility were kind to him. Many wanted to talk basketball. They gave him candy to help with the jitters, and one inmate even gave him a Bible. He starts reading the Bible every day. He wants to get better, and those around him were now honestly and selflessly helping, which is ironic considering he was now in a prison. His old contacts are gone. His child, his former agent, his old teammates, all gone. Once he is released from prison, he reconciles with his brother and begins to work out again. playing basketball and lifting weights. His brother helps him along the journey of recovery. It's a funny story. Swift's brother lived a very different lifestyle. Alex was younger, and he only grew to 6'1". As a result, he quit basketball in high school due to the heavy expectations brought on by his peers after seeing what his older brother could do. Alex actually went to college, paid for by Robert. Back then they were close. A lot of time had passed since they last spoke, but now they were making up for those years. Swift moved in with his brother and his well-adjusted family while he recovered. Life was finally looking up. Some years go by, with little to show. Swift's basketball abilities are improving again as he looks for a comeback to the NBA, but this is undoubtedly a long shot. Whatever the odds may be, I want the world to know that I want Swift to succeed. Last season, he played semi-professional basketball with a small club in Spain, though this coming season is uncertain. I am not saying he is good enough for a G League roster spot, but anything could happen. Swift has lived a full life already, one unlike any other. Yet he is just 32 years old. He still has plenty of game left to be played. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I love making these retrospective pieces along with my current NBA vids. The story behind an athlete fascinates me more than their court performances, honestly. Let me know of any other players you guys would want me to talk about. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also check out the links below to support the channel. I will see you all next time.